We're going to put the finishing touches on the old Washburn parlor guitar today. See if we can make it do some sounds. I'm clipping the ends of the frets here, protecting the area over the soundboard with a piece of steel. Likewise, when I'm doing the end filing of the frets, I've got this piece of metal which I put on the soundboard so that I'm not inadvertently making a big groove in it. A little ink on the top of them and do some dressing. Ended up taking about 4/1000ths off the top of these frets. Doing a little bit of fall away action here. Do a little bit of recrowning with a 3-corner file. Incidentally, thank you to all the people who linked me to David Collins' new reciprocating file video, which is kind of cool. I'm familiar with the concept, and yes, I already follow him, but I do appreciate you looking out for me. Let's do some polishing now with the micro mesh. Make them gleam. And round off the fret ends with a little safe edge file. We'll make a nut, very much like the brass nut I made in the last video, except it'll be bone, and take 1/3 the time. Get that fit in there. Scribe it to size. Saw it off with my little tiny razor saw. It's an X-Acto saw. I don't know what I would do without that thing. We'll scribe the top surface of the frets on there and eyeball a line about 50/1000ths away from that and saw it out with joyous abandon. Seriously, I can't believe I look like that when I'm sawing. It's like a wild animal. I'll mark the outside strings. I like them to be about 3 millimeters from the edge of the nut. I'll scribe the lines of the strings and file them. The new fingerboard binding is glaringly obvious, so I'm just going to rough it up with some 220 grit sandpaper and apply a light coat of finish to it. I'll tape off the top surface with masking tape. I'm going to use some of the Oxford, they call it neck amber lacquer color, I think for Strat necks, vintage ones. Just a little tiny spray of that, and that'll knock off the white. It's just the right shade of jaundice. I'll mark out for the proper string length with compensation. I'll set up to cut the saddle slot. We'll go with a 3/32 saddle this time, rather than 1/8 of an inch, which is about 2.4-ish millimeters. It's a little more vintagey. I'll set the bit height with a shim. Then I can slide the tray back and forth using these thumb screws to lock it in position and have the bit travel in exactly the right line, which I drew on top of the bridge. Routing takes place without incident, or nightmare, or complaint. It's nice doing a through saddle every once in a while. The bit just sort of emerges out into space, into the wings. I'll pencil in some lines for the string ramps. One thing you have to know, if you're going to get involved in these 100-year-old guitars, there's always going to be loose back braces. And you're going to spend a lot of time gluing things up. The other thing to know is standard size jacks are not going to fit inside these guitars. So you're going to end up spending time making little props. Note the battens clamped on the soundboard in the back to hold things in position and keep the back from flexing away from the brace. Here I'm cleaning out the squeeze out. I'll remount the holes in the bridge for some salvaged old bridge pins. Why do I cut the string ramps on a bridge that probably doesn't need them right now? Because in the future it might, and I can space them fairly accurately. Don't know about the next person. Oh, this is interesting. See the central portion here, freshly sanded and oiled. Side wings, oiled about 2.5 weeks ago. Look how much they've darkened, oxidized in that time. I'm trying to clean up some of the black line which was left over from the outline of the previous oversized bridge. I had to scrape some of it away and just rub really furiously. Then I'm going to apply a very thin coat of shellac. You can see on the front side of the bridge there are some deeper, darker areas that were from tear out. I'm going to apply some powdered pigment into those and some more shellac on top and try and disguise them a little bit better. I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out. I mean, it's obvious that there was a different bridge on there, but, you know, it looks taken care of. It's another one of these guitars that was inexplicably left inside a room while it was being painted. In the words of General Anthony McAuliffe, nuts. Well, that was a significant amount of work. More work, to be honest, than it takes to build a guitar from scratch. This is something that can be difficult to convey, how each little operation adds up and the amount of time that goes into it, and all the huge number of unknowns. And there's a mitigating factor in this job too, in that it was shipped to me from the east coast of Canada. I had some photos to look at through email, of course, but I suspect if this had shown up for an in-person diagnosis, I might have turned it down. Because when you're confronted with these things in the flesh, sometimes it's easier to gauge just how far out of whack they are. And this one is really on the razor's edge in terms of workability. And every time I do one of these, I have good-natured souls take time out of their day to email me and tell me that fixing these is wrong because I won't be able to sell them for as much effort as I put in. To those people, I have to explain very gently that I don't sell guitars. I sell a service. Other people get to try and sell them. These are the same people, by the way, who tell me that my channel would be so much bigger and better if I focused on usually whatever brand of guitar they happen to be fixated with. You know, if they had their way, every single week it would be an early 90s Ibanez Gem or exclusively 1970s Rickenbacker basses, 52 weeks of the year. The thing is, it costs a whole bunch of money to ship a guitar like this halfway across Canada. Way more than similar shipping in the US. And being a YouTube guy, it makes more sense for me to tackle the job and film it and not just turn around and send it back to him and say, nope, sorry, can't do it. You know, these things can offer more surprises to the viewer than setting up an Indonesian Strat. Not that there's anything wrong with an Indonesian Strat or videos about setting them up. But I want to do other things. But here's the other thing. The people who want me to only focus on upper-end restorations don't realize that these skills require constant practice. And working on a 100-year-old Washburn like this presents many of the problems that those other guitars fall victim to in a less expensive package. What happens if one of the 14 1930 Martin OM Deluxes ever made suddenly shows up out of the blue in this sad state of repair? Without a bunch of these things under my belt recently, I won't be able to gauge where my chops are at and if I have any business even touching that guitar. Don't bring me the OM Deluxe. Take it to TJ. You know what the first thing I do in the morning is after I have my coffee? I play a game of internet chess on a medium setting against the same bot every single day. And I've learned to correlate my results in that game with how sharp I am mentally on that particular morning. And with that, I know if it's a good day for doing the nail-biting exhibitions of skill, or if I'm better off putting that stuff aside and doing the less critical work. People love to ask about the cost, and I don't usually respond because unless I'm the one who's doing the work, that number doesn't make any sense to share, because it means nothing. Geographic location plays a big part in pricing as well. You have to realize that. I listened to a little talk by Doug Proper, who is he's an ace repair guy that most people in our industry really look up to because he manages to command about the highest prices of anyone in the business. It sort of boggles the mind to your street level guitar tech. He has a formula for pricing that he sticks to, but he's also located in Westchester County, which is a suburb of New York City, with the median family income there is 85% more than where I live. And his prices are pretty close to 85% more than what I charge. which kind of makes sense because I'm living and working in a different economic climate. But this time I'll bite. I'm charging $1,200 Canadian for this job. Was it worth it? It's 40 hours worth of work. Remember to factor in the cost of materials and overhead. Is that fair? Does the resale value of the guitar even matter at some point? I've seen stuff that I've fixed selling on Reverb with my name attached to it like it's a value-added feature or something, you know. What if I took those 40 hours and instead of working on this, built a similar guitar instead? I'd be crazy to sell it for anything less than 3 times the price, what I'm charging, because that would be the low end of the going rate for luthier-built instruments. These are things that I think about when I'm doing the polishing. It's like, ooh, price considerations, factoring in costs, etc. I've got steel strings on this thing, 11 to 52s. I think that might be pushing it, to be honest. There's a kind of eggshell sort of thing going on here. I might go down to 10s after I'm done with this, and I would detune it between playing sessions. This has nothing to do with the neck bowing, by the way. It's about the flexibility of the soundboard and the body and everything together. The sort of folding factor that's built into it. Incidentally, without a truss rod, having only those 2 6mm square carbon fiber bars pulled right up into 6/1000ths relief and is staying there, which I'm very happy with. That seems to be kind of a magic formula for these old guitars. Those 2 carbon fiber 6mm by 6mm. They do what I want them to do. So let's play it. It feels good. It's got a short scale, wide neck, old Adirondack spruce. Pretty good recipe.